Hello friends, welcome back for another Data Factory video. Today we are going to see how to use Data Factory activities such as lookups, ForEach and if conditions to perform a bulk copy with parameterized pipelines. If you don't know how to parameterize a pipeline, watch my previous video where we go through it step by step. But now it's time to build a more complex pipeline using a lookup value, perform a loop and an if statement to evaluate the value in every iteration and decide whether we want to export the data into blob storage or insert the data into a database. This way we can perform bulk copy dynamically based on the values we have in the lookup table. With a lookup activity, we can dynamically determine which objects to operate on in a subsequent activity, instead of having to hardcode the object name. Usually we use files or tables. Personally, I recommend tables for lookup activity reads, but we can also return the results. We can also use the results of a query or a stored procedure. This here is the icon that we have for a lookup activity in Data Factory. We can get the list of values that the lookup activity returns by using this line, which is at activity lookup, which is the name of the lookup here, dot output dot value, and this will get you an array of all the records that you have in the lookup activity returns. Or if you want only the first record, you just do dot first row. Now there is a caveat. A lookup activity in Data Factory can only bring back 2 megabytes of data and 5,000 records. So if you have a table, a lookup table with more than 5,000 records, then it's better to use another way. This is the ForEach loop. This is our second activity that we are going to use in our example. And we are use ForEach loop to iterate over a collection and execute specified activities inside the loop. It's like every other for loop in any programming language. This is the icon that we use for a for loop in the Data Factory. And for example, let's say we have a lookup table that contains these values, orange, apple, banana. Then the first iteration in the ForEach loop, if we call the item function, it will return orange. The second iteration will bring back apple, and the third one will bring back banana. As you can see, it's exactly the same as every for loop we have in any other programming languages like in Python, Java, C++, etc., etc. Last but not least, we have the if condition that provides the same functionality as an if statement in programming languages or a case when statement in SQL. It executes a set of activities when the condition evaluates to true and another set of activities if the condition evaluates to false. In our example, we are going to use a lookup activity, then we are going to use a ForEach activity, and inside the ForEach activity we will have an if statement that evaluates a condition, and if the condition is true, then we are going to copy data from one container in the data lake into another container into the data lake. But if the condition evaluates to false, then we're going to copy the data from the data lake, actually blob storage into a database. Now, without further ado, let's move to Azure portal and start implementing. This is our blob storage, which has two containers, an input container and an output container. Inside the input container, we have three CSV files. One is location CSV. It has location data. Another one has information about people data, and one for vehicle. Now, we are going to loop through these CSV files, and based on an if statement, we are going to copy one of those three CSV files into the output container, and the rest two are going to be saved in the database. And we are going to use a ForEach loop and an if condition and a lookup table to do that. So the first thing we need to check here in our database is to have the lookup table. So if I run this query, I have, as you can see here, I have created three tables. One is for the location data, one is for the vehicle data, and one is the lookup table. And the lookup table contains 3 records, which is location, person, and vehicle, which is the file names of the CSV files that we have in the input container, minus the .csv part that we are going to concatenate inside the Data Factory pipeline. So we have the lookup values here, and then we have our Azure Data Factory, and we are going to create our first pipeline. But again, before we do that, we need to create 4 different datasets. The first dataset would be to get the lookup values. We need to search for Azure SQL Database, click Continue, let's call it lookup. Link service, we have to create a link service between our Data Factory and our Data Factory and our database. Link service, let's call it that. We have to select the subscription here, the server name, and the database name, SQL authentication, username. I hope I haven't forgotten the password. So click test connection to see if we have a valid connection to the database. Yeah, we have. Let's create the link service. And now it's time to select the lookup table as the table we are going to point and get the data from. Click OK. And we have this dataset now that points to the table in the database. If we click on the preview data, we will see the data in the database, that the 3 records, location, person, vehicle. Great. Now we need another dataset for the input CSV files. So Blob Storage, click CSV, let's call it input, select a link service. So again, we have to create a link service for Blob Storage, storage linked service, and then select the subscription, storage account name, perfect. Click test connection. Yeah, that's fine. Click create. And now here for the container we use input, but here we don't have to specify the file name because we are going to parameterize this dataset because we want to dynamically loop over the files we have in the blob storage. So click first row as header and then click OK. Now we need to create a parameter here. Let's call it file name. And in the file path, click here, add dynamic content, and click on file name, and that would give you this add dataset.filename. And yep, that's fine. We have parameterized our dataset here. Everything else seems good. Then we need one more dataset for our output container. So again, blob storage. Click on CSV, click continue. Let's call it output. Link service, the same link service. We don't have to recreate a link service or create a new one. But for the file path here, we choose the output folder. Click OK. And file name, again, we are going to parameterize the file name right now. Click on OK. Then under parameters, create a new parameter, call it output file name. Under connection, go into file name, add dynamic content, click on output file name, so it will give you this add dataset.output file name. Click on OK. First row as header, that's perfect. And we have to create one last dataset that points to the output table in the database. So again, MySQL Azure SQL Database, click on continue, let's call it output table, link service. We have already created a database linked service, table name. We don't have to specify again because remember this is, and dynamically we are going to copy the data from Blob Storage into the database, so we don't have to define the table name here. We are going to use a parameter again. Let's create a parameter, call it table name, and under connection again click on edit. Here the schema, the default schema is DBO, but you can use a dynamic parameter again. We are going to use the dynamic parameter only for the table name. So you click here, you click table name, that's fine. And I think we are good to go. Now it's time to create our pipeline. Click the three dots in the pipelines blade and then new pipeline. The first thing we need to do is drag and drop a lookup action. So under general, you will find the lookup activity, drag and drop it into the empty canvas here. Let's call it lookup. And under settings, select the input data source. That for us would be the lookup table, right? You can preview the data and you'll see it brings back only the one record. And this is because we have first row only ticked. So untick this box and preview the data again, and it's going to bring back a list, an array of values, location, person, vehicle. Perfect. Now the next thing we need to do is for each activity. Under iterations and conditionals, you will find the for each activity, drag and drop it here, and connect the lookup activity with the for each activity. Let's call it for each. And under settings, under items, here it says this property should be parameterized. Click on add dynamic content. And again, remember there is a way to get the data from the lookup activity, and that would be using add activity lookup output dot value. And this will iterate through over each value every time that you loop. Then we need to add one activity here, so you can add it here. Click on add activity, and let's say we want an if condition, right? So where is the if condition here? Click here, if condition, but actually it's better if you click on the pencil. You will see the if condition better because this is nested, so you go deeper inside the pipeline every time you click on the pencil. And then if condition, let's call it if condition, that's fine. We need to specify an activity, but first we need to use an expression, so we evaluate a condition here, right? Click on the add dynamic content, and here let's say we want the if condition. We are going to evaluate whether the current item in the condition equals to person. So if the data set, if the file name is person, then we are going to copy the data from blob storage from one container to another container if the condition evaluates to true. So if the file name is vehicle or location, we're going to copy those data to the respective tables into the database. One thing we need to do here is click the functions and type equals, and this will give, sorry, I missed, click equals here, and then click on for each. That will give you the item. And how do you get the, you need to specify the property here, the property of the current item. And for example, here the property is file name, because in the lookup table we have only one column called file name. So if you type here dot file name, you will get the file name. So the first one would be, I think, location, the second iteration would bring back person, the third iteration would bring back vehicle. So we are going to loop over those CSV files. If the file name equals, let's say, person, then if this condition evaluates to true, let's add an activity, click on the pencil here, and drag and drop the pencil, and now we need to actually have a drag and drop a copy activity, because we are going, if the condition value is to true, we are going to copy the data from the input container to the output container. Let's say copy, copy CSV files, and click on the source dataset. So we have to use the input dataset, and we have to provide the file name, which is a parameter here, because we are going to dynamically move data from one container to another. And here we have also the sync dataset that we have to use the output dataset that we created before, and we have to provide the output file name parameter. So click on the add dynamic content, and this is now it's time to provide the item dot file name. Well, that's fine, but first we need to use the concat function, the concatenate function, concatenate, and then item again dot file name. Let's delete this file name here, and then comma dot CSV, comma dot CSV. So this here will bring back, so let's say if the file name we have in the database is location, that would concatenate location with .csv, and it will provide the full CSV file name. Click on OK. Let's do actually the same here for the output file name, add dynamic content. Again, use the concat function, item dot file name, and comma, and then .csv. Perfect. Click OK. Copy behavior none. We don't have to change anything here. Let's go back to our ForEach activity, actually to the if condition, because if the condition evaluates to false, then we're going to copy the data from blob storage, from the blob storage to the respective database tables. So click on the pencil again, drag and drop the copy activity. For source, use the input dataset again. Again, we provide the same input concat, then item dot file name, comma dot CSV. And for sync, we need to provide the output table dataset that will point to the table name, and that would be just to upper and item dot file name. We don't need to use concat here, because the only thing we need to use is actually to capitalize everything. So we need to upper to capitalize the location and the vehicle in order to find the right table. Click on OK. And I think we are good to go. So let's go back into the pipeline. We have the lookup activity that brings back the lookup records that we want to loop over. And here we have this ForEach, this under settings, you will see that we get the records from the lookup activity, and we iterate over each one. And inside the ForEach loop, we have an if condition, and in the if condition, if this expression equals to true, then we copy the files from one container to another. If not, then we copy the files from the container into the respective table in the database. Let's copy data to database, right? Database. Let's click Publish All, and then we can run using the debug here. We can run our pipeline and see if we made any errors along the way. Click on the debug and click output, and under output click refresh, and it's going to give you all the actions that is performing, all the steps that is running. So it performed the lookup activity, as you can see here, the green this tick here, and here now it is going through the if conditions inside the ForEach loop. And as you can see, we already copied the data from one container to another. So if we go into our output container, we are going to see, yeah, this person.csv. Remember, if the condition is true, which is the condition evaluates, oh, we made a mistake here. Let's see what that is. You can click on here where it says error, and it will open up, the error details. As you can see, if you scroll down, we will see that there is no object name called dbo.toUpper item file name. Yeah, that's correct, because if we go into our here into our false, where we copy the data from the container to the database, and remember for here in the sync activity, we forgot the @ symbol, right? Otherwise, it doesn't recognize the function otherwise. So if we click publish again, and now let's run it again, click on debug, and it's running again. Let's see. It performed the lookup activity again. That's fine. It went fine. Now it is iterating through the file names that we return from the lookup activity. As you can see, it copied the file from one container to another, and also the data from the container into the database. So if we go into our output container again, click refresh, we have our person CSV here. That's fine. And if we go into our database, select from location, we are going to see the data here, and if we select from vehicle, we are going to see the respective data. This is how you can bulk import or bulk export data using lookups, ForEach, and if activities. It's up to you to design your workflow according to your client's requirements. The sky is the limit. There are countless possibilities of what you can do and achieve using Data Factory. This is it for today, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video and you learned something new. If you like the video, please click the like button and subscribe to the channel, and I will see you in the next one. Thank you.